Hi everybody, welcome to the lecture for Chapter 1 from our Fullan textbook, and it is the Introduction to the Challenge of Change. So why this textbook, why did we pick it? This book was chosen really due to its application for change and for school improvement. It links perfectly with the other book that we're going to be using, the Dufour and Marzano book. I like both books and they offer different perspectives, which is why we picked them. There are multiple authors and editors on this book. One of them is one of my mentors, which is going to be great because anytime that I get to really speak and praise his work, it's fantastic. But for the sake of this class, I'm going to call this the Fullan textbook. The point of this book is really to provide broad-based ideas on school reform and things that you can determine on your own related to school reform. I think it's good and I think it's very broad-based, but that can help you in, we'll really talk about this and hammer this out week 3 and week 4 of class. So my take, what is my belief is a faculty member and a scholar. I believe that all schools are different, all districts are different, all states are all states are different, all counties are different, all countries are different. Every school district is a unique organization and every building is a unique organization. You are at the mercy of mandates, and you can change those mandates, you can try to, but you're going to be at the mercy of them. I'm a functionalist, which basically means in my mind that you work with the mandates and you find ways to make them effective for the people that are a part of them. But this book focuses on the fact that, what you can do individually in buildings or in your districts, which is why we chose it for the class. I like this book. It's very broad-based. It's a lot of big ideas, and a lot of it is very kumbaya-ish. That's okay, but I think you'll get a lot out of it throughout the course, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It's one of the reasons why we picked it. So, Chapter 1, really all I'm having you do, for the first discussion board is read the first 2 chapters in this book and the first chapter of the Marzano textbook. The Dufour book, and when I say Marzano, it's Dufour/Marzano. That has a little more to the beginning of it. The Fullan book says less, but is very focused. Don't discount it, but I think it's important that you look at both of these. So for the first real week of content for this class, 2 chapters in Fullan, 1 in Dufour is going to be what we're going to be looking at. So Fullan talks about the Tony Blair project, and you could be thinking Tony Rich project or Blair Witch project or Tony Blair, I don't really care. That's, my memetics going through my head as I look at this, but really he's talking about something that happened in England when Tony Blair came into office. And education was a very clear platform. He stated that he had a goal, that he was going to set targets, that literacy was going to go to 80% and math was going to go to 75% for 11-year-olds. This was an enormous undertaking, but there was a lot of pressure because if the head of the country is saying this, there's going to be a lot of pressure on schools and a lot of pressure on teachers to do it. Blair said they would combine pressure and support, which was change knowledge. And you're going to see Fullan really talk about how pressure is important for teachers and principals and how support is as well. It might be a different approach than you're used to. Pressure is the idea of having targets, giving data, giving it to the teachers, getting it back from the teachers, and intervening when performance is bad. And support is helping at the school level, district level, and government level through new positions or increased training and professional development. So it worked to a point. Literacy went from 62% to 75, close to meeting the target, and math went from 62 to 73. This was all done within 1 election period, and the results plateaued afterwards. But think about this. If No Child Left Behind came out and it said, these is the goals, but these were the long-term goals, you'd be pretty happy with this because it's not an absolute. But it was a target, it was given, there was a commitment, and they made it happen, and they advanced as best as they possibly could. So the plateau happened because the initiative was top-heavy. Really, it was coming from the government, and the districts fed it, they dealt with it, and then it went down to the teacher level. The government didn't adjust the strategy after improvement in the targets, and they didn't change the targets and provide adjusted support. They just said we're going to stay with the targets. And then the next election, it wasn't a priority. And I think that's the key, because government goes on quick fixes on everything, and what's trendy one day isn't trendy the next. And in schools, we know that to be the case. Right now in education, and there are a lot of you that are in this class that are starting your doctorate program. I think it's a split of about half and half of people that have been here and people that, you know, that aren't, that are right at the beginning of their program. And some people are taking this class as an elective. Here's what you need to keep in mind. Right now, if I'm talking and saying what are the sexy issues in schools to study, right now, number one, I would argue, is the notion of the different forms of school buildings, meaning a 9th grade academy, a 4-5 intermediate building, a 5-6 intermediate building. Those are sexy ideas in schools right now, because if that can improve student performance, they work, and that's good. Anything dealing with transgender education is huge right now as well. So if that's an interest of yours, something that you might want to consider pursuing. Anything really related to special ed mandates and reforms, it's getting more and more important and more prevalent in the research. So if you're interested in special ed, that's something else to consider. I say technology, but I don't necessarily mean technology. I honestly think really it's teachers' effectiveness with technology has really come out as something in educational literature that's a big topic right now. So those are some ideas for your dissertation. I'm going to talk with you guys a lot throughout the course of the year on ways that you can craft and design a dissertation in your topics, but these are some ideas that can get you started with that. So Fullan came up with a concept from all of this called Tri-Level reform, basically saying that all schools have to be on the same page and address change at the same time, so that if a reform occurs, all the schools in the district are on the same page and are participating in the reform effort and acting together. The state must approach this from the same perspective as well. Easier said than done. Think about the state that you are taking this class in. We have 500 school districts, plus 500 plus school districts. We have school districts that serve maybe 200 or 300 people. Should they merge into other districts? You know, dare me say the merger, word here, but those are all separate entities and organizations that are operating on their own initiatives and their own capacities. So is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Can we learn from it? I don't know. That's something you need to consider when you're thinking about Fullan and his work. So, in my experience, I'm coming from the public school sector, not the private school sector. I worked in a district with 1 high school, 2 middle schools, and 7 elementary schools. In my mind, and you should be thinking all of it, and you should be thinking this as well, obviously the high school knew what the district wanted. The 2 middle schools, as long as the principals liked each other, they were on the same page. The 7 elementary schools were never on the same page. There was a significant disconnect. Some were doing Chinese and Spanish in the kindergarten room. The other one was doing a Baldrige model. It was crazy, but they were all doing different things. One was doing an anti-bullying campaign, but they all had their own different missions, meaning that under this reform concept, it wouldn't hit the targets that it needed to hit. Under Fullan's model, reform is really system-wide, and it engages each school at the same time. So you need to think about that, and you need to consider that as well. So Fullan stresses that you don't wait around. It's going to take a while for the state, district, or school to get their act together. You cannot wait for that to happen. You have to focus on your perspective, which is the internal, and build connections with the other two. That can allow for the reform to occur naturally, and it can provide more opportunities for people to be on the same page and allow the reform to occur. So the key really is on this diagram that's on page 6. One thing about this textbook, there are no author-designed PowerPoints, and anyway, I do my own PowerPoints for class, but I want you to be able to have the book in front of you so that you can see the diagrams. This book is very diagram heavy, and I like this one because it says there are 6 actions, and we're going to talk about each one of these a little bit. So, direction and sector engagement. This is the idea that less is more. You only should have a few select goals for the district and publicly state them. For some of you, when you look at your district strategic plan, some of you might have been involved in your district strategic plan. Some of these strategic plans have 20 or 30 goals. Fullan would say, don't do that, a select few. Have a leadership team, that works on them, and personnel specific to one or two of the goals. This makes sure that everybody has a target, they know what they're doing, and that the reform actually has a shot of actually working. Resources need to be committed to making these goals a reality, and they should be there to help. So, in order to build capacity, this has to be done with instructional strategies and the right personnel necessary to explain them. So, if you're going to do STEM, which a lot of you are in buildings that are big on STEM. STEM's another big research project right now for dissertations, but I hesitate to tell you to do that because if you're getting a doctorate in ed leadership, I wouldn't do STEM. I would do maybe principal knowledge of STEM or district incorporation of STEM, but that's really more one for curriculum studies than ed leadership. But if your district is, anyway, if your district is STEM, you need to train principals on how to be instructional leaders in STEM and hire people that actually know what they're doing. You don't just say, hey, it's STEM time. The one that I lived through when I was a public school employee was the smart board movement, where every building, every classroom got a smart board. It was the dumbest and stupidest waste of money on the freaking planet because nobody wanted to use it as anything more than a projector. And you had one or two teachers that did it and engaged it, and other ones that just, led it as a projector. So it cost districts hundreds of thousands of dollars, and nobody cared, but nobody was trained on it. So when you have mission, you train on it. And the people responsible have to push the targets, push the results, and push the training, and make sure that people are actually using it. Something big that's going on in Oklahoma right now is this notion of the one-to-one laptop or Chromebook in schools. Once again, great idea. Teachers got to get on board and get involved with it. If a teacher doesn't want to use it, then what does it really accomplish? If the teacher just wants, doesn't want to use it, then it just sits around and it collects dust. So leaders must be developed at all levels. There has to be a strong infrastructure of leaders at the building level, district level, and state level, and you have to have important training and development. One of my areas of, I think, just disgust in education is the lack of training and professional development that principals get. Teachers get professional development. It might not be what they want professional development on, but they get it because the principals are constantly giving them professional development opportunities. The principals themselves hardly get it. Superintendents get it even less. So it's important that we keep leaders developed and we keep them updated on what's new and what's going on in schools. Those of you that are practicing principals, think about the last time you learned anything new about school finance. Without professional development, that's a problem. So manage the distractors. In complex systems, they're inevitable. There's always going to be the teacher who says no, who you cannot fire. And there's going to be somebody who won't go along with the change action. Sometimes it'll be a principal too. You got to determine what you do with these people. And in some cases, there'll be easy decisions. Some cases, there'll be hard decisions. So evaluation should be continuous. Participants must be encouraged to ask questions to understand the process. They can't be scared of you as a leader. They have to know that even though they're being evaluated, they need clarity and they need clarification. And it has to be looked upon, not as questioning the initiative, it's trying to understand it. And it helps increase visibility and it spreads the word across the system as well, which I think is important. So two-way communication could be government and district and school. An argument that you're going to hear me make a lot, and when you have a politics of ed class, you'll hear this as well. The district leaders need to be connected with what the government's doing because then they can funnel that down to the school level. If you have a superintendent that's not connected, that can create problems in understanding what's going on or even getting resources that you might not have known were available. But this helps you really get that vision down and respond to problems if people aren't getting the reform effort effectively. So Fullan talks about this notion of moral purpose, which is basically making sure that you're acting in both a legal and both an ethical manner, and trying to always find ways to help people improve, students improve, teachers improve, and try to close the gap for all students. Once again, this is much easier said than done. I know some of you are working in what I would call easy school districts. You're not going to reinvent the wheel in these districts. There's going to be stuff that's already done, already established, and all you have to do is really just advance what's going on. That's going to be challenging in districts that don't have that, don't have that advantage. So finding ways to help students improve is one of the biggest challenges of change, and finding ways to help teachers improve is a challenge as well. So the next chapter, and this is links with this one, goes over the 8 forces for leaders, and it's adapted from some articles that Fullan's already published. So we'll continue with that chapter, and then that'll give you your overview of Fullan before we move on to the DeFore and Marzano text.